White supremacy started as a philosophy in the 1500s from a concept called natural selection. This was the basic belief that if God made you stronger, then you had the right to control the weaker people of the world. In the 1600s, the Protestants wrote the King James Version of the Holy Bible, and soon after sent missionaries around the world practicing the philosophy of divine order. During the early years of the colonies of North America, poor blacks from Africa and poor whites from Europe lived together, they worked together, and even intermarried. They didn't have a problem with each other. They had a problem with the elite ruling class that was exploiting their labor. That problem became a problem for the elites. In 1676, blacks and whites rebelled and almost destroyed the colonial ruling powers. This event was called Bacon's Rebellion. After that, the powers that be realized that they were outnumbered and had to devise a plan to keep the lower classes occupied so they would never rebel again. In 1705, a bunch of laws were created that gave poor whites certain privileges that did not extend to poor blacks, such as exemptions from public whippings, land grants, and wages after their servitude was complete. Simultaneously, these same laws started the foundation for the chattel slavery of Africans. Historically, this legislation was called the Black Codes, or Slave Codes. In 1791, the Virginia legislature made the term white a legal distinction. This was the birth of white supremacy as an institution and no longer only a philosophy. In the 1800s, white supremacy, the institution, used education and the justice system to justify its existence. Judge Roger B. Taney's famous decision in the Dred Scott case echoes throughout history. No Negro has any rights in America that a white man is bound to respect. Scientists like Samuel Cartwright and Benjamin Rush called people of African descent insane because they didn't like to be enslaved and preferred to be a part of a more democratic society. In 1910, European psychiatrist Carl Jung said that integration will pull down the white race. It's men like this that top universities require you to study before you can earn a degree from one of their colleges, thus breeding a culture of contempt for people of African descent. So one might ask, how do we fight a system of white supremacy? Warrior scholar Neely Fuller Jr. wrote a book called The United Independent Compensatory Code, a textbook workbook for victims of racism, white supremacy. And in it, he defines white supremacy as a system that dominates all non-white people in the known universe in 9 areas of people activity. Those 9 areas are economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. It was Neely Fuller Jr. that was the inspiration for Dr. Frances Cress Welsing when she wrote her book, The ISIS Papers. In her book, she introduces the theory that white supremacy as a system is employed by people that classify themselves as white to prevent their genetic annihilation. Dr. Welsing uses the research of German scientist Gregor Mendel in support of the fact that dominant genes destroy recessive genes. African people, being the first human beings on the planet, possess the dominant gene, and thus could breed white people off the planet if given the opportunity. So it is important to understand, because of the biological possibilities, a truly multicultural society would be suicide for white people. A system of white supremacy is able to remain sustainable because of confusion. A confusing concept to most people of color is that of racism. The root word of racism is race. Race defines a competitive relationship, not how somebody looks. It's a verb, not an adjective. A more appropriate example of racism would be the Olympic Games, due to its competitive nature. Racism is a tool of white supremacy that is deployed to divide and confuse the lower masses. Remember the lesson learned from Bacon's Rebellion: never let them join forces. And there are other words that are just as confusing, like bigotry and prejudice, because they are usually given to us within a negative context, yet they are your God-given rights. For example, I have never been in contact with a poisonous snake. However, I heard they can kill me, so I choose to discriminate against them. I also choose not to live with them if I can help it. There are situations where discrimination and segregation can be healthy. In 1861, Abraham Lincoln attempted to purchase land in Mexico for people of African descent. He tried on 3 other occasions to separate African people from the jurisdiction of white supremacy. Lincoln felt that would be the best way to achieve success for African people. In 1934, W.E.B. Du Bois suggested to the NAACP that Black Americans will never achieve equality or justice within a white society. Therefore, we should embrace voluntary segregation for our own safety and psychological disposition. The system of white supremacy has proven to be a system of injustice, and the only way to defeat it is to replace it with a system of justice.